In an act of petty but expected political vengeance, Republican Speaker of the House Kevin McCarthy is moving to kick 3 prominent Democrats off their congressional committees. So this particular story is not a surprise at all to anybody who's been paying attention because it's been telegraphed for about 2 years, this particular move. It was threatened by Kevin McCarthy back in late January or February 2021 when Democrats held the majority in the House of Representatives, and Speaker Pelosi initiated a move to remove a couple of Republicans from their committee assignments, which was a relatively rare thing to do. That's a maneuver that is very rarely, if ever, used, and we'll get into the reasons why Pelosi kicked those 2 particular Republicans off their committees. But at the time it happened, Kevin McCarthy, who was just the Republican minority leader at the time, because, again, Republicans were in the minority at the time. So this particular story is not exactly a surprise to anybody who's been paying attention for the past few weeks, let alone the past 2 or 3 years, because it's the culmination of a political threat that was issued about 2 years ago to the day in late January or early February 2021. When Democrats were in the majority in the House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy was not the Speaker, he was merely the Republican minority leader, and Nancy Pelosi was the Speaker of the House. At the time, in February, and then again in November, I think 2021, Democrats moved to kick a couple of Republicans off their committee assignments. And we'll get into who those Republicans were and why they were kicked off. But the move was relatively rare. That's not a common occurrence in the House of Representatives. And at the time, Kevin McCarthy and other Republicans threatened Democrats. They said, look, if you do this, and they threatened them in February when the first Republican was kicked, and then again in November when the second Republican was kicked. They were like, if you do this, if and when Republicans retake the majority, turnabout's fair play, and we're going to do it to you. Now, again, we'll get into why that's ridiculous and it's this, unnecessary threat of escalation. But the bottom line is Republicans are in the majority now in the House of Representatives. Kevin McCarthy, not Nancy Pelosi, is Speaker of the House now. And he's making good on his threat. He's formally moving to kick Adam Schiff and Eric Swalwell off the Intelligence Committee and Ilhan Omar off, I think it's a Foreign Relations Committee. It's a controversial move, according to Axios, and really every political analyst everywhere, opposed by even some Republicans in the House, and we'll get to a couple of those, I think, and a stark escalation of the ongoing tit-for-tat with Democrats over committee assignments. As I said, McCarthy vowed revenge after Democrats and a handful of Republicans, it was a bipartisan vote, technically, voted to remove Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar from their committee assignments in 2021. He announced the move in response to House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, who is Nancy Pelosi's heir apparent. He's the new leader of the Democrats in the House of Representatives, pressing for Schiff and Swalwell to be kept in their seats. So basically, the way it works is ultimately, as Speaker of the House, the chief administrative officer of the House, McCarthy has ultimate authority. I think this still has to go to a floor vote, though, and be decided by a majority. But Hakeem Jeffries can only really recommend certain Democrats be put on assignments. Democrats have to be put on committee assignments, right? They can't just be filled by Republicans. But ultimately, the majority technically has the authority to decide who, can sit on these assignments or these committees and who can't. They have basically, voir dire is, what it's done is, in jury selection, basically. They can say, no, you can't add this person, or yes, you can. Now, typically speaking, assignments are accepted. But this is the wild, wild west now, baby. This is a whole new world because Democrats 2 years ago kicked 2 particularly troublesome Republicans off their committees. So McCarthy basically responded with a condescending letter. He's like, I appreciate the loyalty you have to your Democratic colleagues, but I cannot put partisan loyalty ahead of national security. Says the guy who is a tried and true MAGA cultist and Trump supporter. If you support Donald Trump after his litany of, demonstrations of corruption and his breaches of national security. Like, for example, when he tried to keep classified documents away from the National Archives and FBI and lied to them repeatedly, forcing them to execute a search warrant to go get them back, let alone his close ties, with Russia, his attempted quid pro quo of Ukraine, all these things. His attempted coup, that's a threat to national security, right? January 6th, probably a threat to national security when, a loser of an election sends a mob to attack the, United States Capitol to prevent the peaceful transfer of power. That seems like a pretty big, threat to national security. You're still loyal to Don. But this? So anyway, it's a hypocritical, condescending letter. And he says, as such, I am hereby rejecting the appointments of Representative Adam Schiff and Representative Eric Swalwell to serve on the Intelligence Committee. Now, we got to dig into this a bit. What are his reasons? Okay, so, I guess technically he doesn't have to offer a reason, right? If he had the votes, he could just say, I don't like him. But it would not be politically efficacious, right? It would probably piss a lot of people off, including moderates and centrists. So, in pledging to keep Swalwell and Schiff off their House committees in this Congress, McCarthy has cited past conduct. He says that Eric Swalwell, in his case, it was because of his reported liaisons, run-ins, with a suspected Chinese spy. So, there's the reporting is that, Swalwell either dated or had some sort of casual relationship with a woman who is suspected of being a spy for the Chinese government in America. Now, according to all investigations and evidence with which I'm familiar, Eric Swalwell was not ever accused of any wrongdoing, let alone, there's not even evidence that he did commit wrongdoing, but he wasn't even accused of it, right? But that's the thing that McCarthy is citing. He's like, look, you interacted with a person who may or may not be a Chinese spy, and yeah, you haven't been accused of any wrongdoing, and no, we have no evidence that you did do any wrongdoing, but we can't have you on any committees pertaining to national security. So yoink. In the case of Adam Schiff, he's a real pain in the ass for Republicans because he was on the House January 6th Select Committee investigating Donald Trump. He, was a prominent proponent of investigations into former President Trump for, any ties or inappropriate ties between Trump, the Trump campaign, and the Russian Federation. So he's been a thorn in the Republican side for a long time. And that's the exact reason that McCarthy is citing for removing Schiff. He's saying that, Schiff made comments related to the disputed Steele dossier, which was used as the basis, as the predicate for the investigation into, again, Trump's ties to Russia. So let's take that at face value. Let's say that Schiff was inaccurate or dishonest even about his public remarks, like when he's on talk shows or, attempting to spin things on behalf of the Democrats during this time. If dishonesty is the benchmark for which a person can't serve on a particular committee, then no Republican anywhere would be serving on any committee ever. And maybe even most Democrats, right? Politicians lie, which isn't to say it's an excuse, but if that's the strict method, that Schiff made comments that you feel were dishonest in a public forum about the strength of the evidence connecting Donald Trump to Russia, if that's the standard, then you need to yank every Republican off every committee assignment, because I guarantee you they've all publicly lied or propagandized or, shaded the truth, right? So this is clearly an act of political vengeance. And, of course, right-wing commentators are weighing in. So like this one tweet from Dan K. Eberhardt, who I believe is a Fox News contributor. He says, Democrats knew this would happen when they removed Republicans they didn't like from committees. McCarthy warned he would do it if Democrats opened the door. Democrats have to live with the long-term consequences of their short-term actions. Now, we'll get into why this is BS, right? They didn't kick Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar because they didn't like them. I mean, of course, they didn't like them, but there are very real reasons, very visceral reasons, that we're going to get into as to why those two particular Republicans were kicked. I mean, hell, Democrats don't like Jim Jordan. Jim Jordan wasn't kicked off any assignment. Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz wasn't kicked off any assignment. So it clearly wasn't just a matter of who we like and dislike. Lauren Boebert wasn't kicked off any. So again, this is BS. Now, I will say as a sidebar, as I understand and kind of respect as a partisan the logic that Dan's using here, because this is why Republicans are able to punch above their weight class, right? Even though Republicans are incredibly unpopular, even though their agenda is even more unpopular than they are, even though there are fewer Republicans than Democrats in this country, they are able to collect W after W in elections, in large part, not only because of their systemic advantages, but because they understand that politics is about power. Now, obviously, this power should be leveraged or should be used for just ends, but Republicans are ruthless when they pursue power. They don't play by Marquis of Queensberry rules and yes, good son, yes, we'll act in good faith. They don't do that. Democrats, unfortunately, still do that. They give Republicans entirely too much credit in Congress and hesitate to have any sort of ruthless instinct. Dan K. Eberhart here, who's not even in Congress, he's just a conservative commentator, he's calling it correctly. He's like, look, you guys did a thing, and we told you we were going to do it back to you. And you would never accept that sort of justification or rationale from your kids, assuming you have any. Two wrongs don't make a right, assuming that you believed what Democrats did was a wrong. But Republicans and conservatives, they don't care for the most part. They're like, yeah, okay, if you do it, we're going to do it. And Democrats never do that, never say that. Why not? Maybe we should start playing from that book, especially when you know that we would use it for better and more just ends. So maybe we should start being willing as Democrats to say, you know what, guys, you finally taught us. You finally taught us. So if you do this to us, when we retake the majority, we're going to do it to you even more. I would like to see some of that, ruthless instinct from Democrats. Anyway, real quick, why were Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar kicked off their assignments back in 2021? Well, let's start with Gosar, because he's the older. I think he's mentally unwell, and I think that a lot of people do as well. He just evinces certain qualities that suggest he's not all there. In 2021, Gosar, who's an older guy, probably not an anime lover, his office, his campaign released an Attack on Titan style anime video in which Gosar, an animated version of Gosar, takes two swords and bisects an animated version of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a colleague, bisects her with katanas. And then at the very end, before the commercial cuts to black, he swings those two swords at an animated version of President Biden. So Gosar was removed from his assignments when Republicans refused to take care of it themselves by reprimanding him, by taking him off the committee assignments themselves, by basically saying, hey, clean your own house, make it clear that, advocating for or endorsing some sort of violent act against a colleague and the sitting president of the United freaking States is unacceptable. Don't just go, no. Make it clear that is unacceptable. You will be crushed politically if you do this. Republicans didn't do it. Right? A couple of them gave tepid responses like, oh, Paul, you shouldn't have done that. You shouldn't have done that. But none of them took any specific action. McCarthy had the option to say, guys, I'm yanking you off this assignment, Paul. That you took that way too far. You can, give passionate rhetoric. You can make a case very strongly, but you can't put out a violent promotional ad where you kill a colleague and attack the president of the United States. That's unacceptable. We wouldn't accept that from Democrats. We're not going to accept that from Republicans. It's unacceptable. You're in timeout. McCarthy didn't do it. So as a result, in November 2021, the Democratic majority put it to a floor vote, and Republicans voted for it as well, and they yanked him off committee assignments. Now, before they did that, in February of that year, they did it to Marjorie Taylor Greene. Why did they do it to Marjorie Taylor Greene? Well, if you're familiar with Marjorie Taylor Greene, you're familiar with her litany of anti-Semitic remarks and conspiracy theories about Jewish space lasers. Was 9/11 really a thing that happened? All these things. Just QAnon, she was a loud and vocal proponent of the idea that the Democratic Party is literally a cabal of Satan-worshiping, blood-drinking pedophiles. All these things, right? But here's the thing. As bad as that was, as bad as all that was, Democrats just they put up with it. They were hoping, again, Republicans would keep their own house in order and just break Marjorie Taylor Greene of that. That is unacceptable. You will never do that again. If you even gesture in that direction, we'll take you off your assignments and put you in timeout too. But Republicans never did because they don't care. The thing that finally got her kicked off the committees was previous statements that she'd made right before she was elected, which nobody knew about until 2021. And we're going to look at those right now. So in one post from January 2019, she liked a comment saying a bullet to the head would be quicker to remove Speaker Pelosi instead of impeachment. She liked a comment, clearly endorsing violence against the most powerful, not just, she wasn't even a colleague at the time, but a public servant, a public official, second in line to the presidency, the leader of the House of Representatives. And then in another post from April 2018, Green wrote conspiratorially about the Iran deal, one of former President Barack Obama's signature foreign policy achievements. A commenter asked Green, now do we get to hang them? Meaning Hillary and Obama, in reference to Obama and Hillary Clinton. She said, stage is being set. Players are being put in place. We must be patient. This must be done perfectly or liberal judges would let them off. Yeah. So, obviously, right, that would have been bad. That should have kept her from being elected in the first place. And again, as bad as all the other stuff was, this stuff in 2018 and 2019 wasn't revealed or wasn't discovered until 2021. And that was essentially the straw that broke the camel's back for Democrats. They were like, no, between the anti-Semitism and conspiracy theories and everything else, QAnon, and now this, unacceptable. So when Republicans wouldn't reprimand her, wouldn't take her off committee assignments and put her in timeout, Democrats did it for them. So these situations are wildly different, okay? And there's actually this clip I'll play you from Adam Schiff just a couple of days ago, or maybe it was, it was this apparently Christmas Eve, okay? So recent enough because that was after Republicans took the House majority. Schiff knew this was coming. This is a 45-second clip that kind of puts things in perspective, so I'll let Schiff take it from here.
Democrats kicked Marjorie Taylor Greene off of her committees, so why shouldn't they be able to kick you off of your committees?
Well, this is the same false equivalence they often use, which is Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar were removed from their committees because they were inciting violence against fellow members of Congress. The day I start to incite violence against people that I serve with or elsewhere, then fine, take me off my committee. The moment I start engaging in insurrection, then fine, sanction me. But don't give me this false equivalence, Mr. McCarthy, and suggest that somehow leading legitimate investigations of Donald Trump's corruption with Russia, Ukraine, and January 6th is somehow...
Well said, Adam. Yeah, no, he's got it completely right. This is a false equivalence between Republicans and Democrats, and that's the only kind of equivalence that Republicans traffic in, okay? These two situations are not comparable. Democrats exercised enormous, incomprehensible, almost, just completely undeserved patience for their Republican colleagues to let them take care of these outlier Republicans like Gosar and Green. They gave them every opportunity, months and months and months. Guys, take care of this, take care of this, take care of this. Make a point that inciting violence, that, abundant conspiracy theories like QAnon and 9/11 trutherism and, all these things, that this is unacceptable. This is unacceptable. And instead, Republicans chose not to because they are not interested in holding their own accountable. But removing people from their committee assignments after they continuously incite violence or endorse violence, not only against their fellow colleagues and their bosses, but again, the sitting president of the United States, that's a perfectly legitimate reason to remove them from assignments when Republicans won't take care of it themselves. What's going on here with Schiff and Swalwell is not even remotely comparable. This is simply an exercise in partisanship and power politics. And so McCarthy might be able to pull it off, right? He's already started the process. It's going to end in a floor vote. He may have the votes to make this happen, although we don't know because, again, at least a few House Republicans have indicated, like Nancy Mace and others, that they would not back a vote to remove Swalwell and Schiff. I think because on some level they're honest enough to recognize these two situations aren't even remotely comparable. But we don't know what the final vote tally will be. So it's entirely possible that at the end, Schiff and Swalwell will not be serving on certain assignments, along with Ilhan Omar. But again, this is a false equivalence, and anyone who suggests otherwise is a liar. Hey you! Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, and I hope that you did, please hit the like and subscribe buttons below. And if you absolutely hated the video, the best revenge for you is also to hit the like and subscribe buttons below. That'll teach me. If you want to share an opinion or share some feedback, go ahead and leave a comment, all right? 2023 is a year of change, hence the aggressive rebrand and commitment to new content. Inspired by my friends Luke Beasley and STV Philly, my personal goal for this channel is to hit 40,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So I'm hoping you'll do me a solid by spreading the word and the videos to potential fans and hate watchers alike. And in the meantime, we'll be pondering politics again with you very soon.